Hi, my name is Robert. Please read the comments in the About section of this video. It has valuable information and updates. My YouTube channel has a disclaimer video that I encourage you to watch. And please like, share, and subscribe. I hope you found what you're looking for. Thank you very much for watching. Last night determined that the water pump was leaking on Little Red. It's the original water pump from what I know. And man, I just need to replace that because I don't know if I'm going to see this car within the next 6 months or so, and a leaking water pump can go out at any time, especially one leaking in the summer. And as soon as I get this done, I'm either going to go ahead and leave or fix these door latches before I leave, because she's got two bad door latches on the car. The right rear and the driver's door not locking properly with the system. I pulled the serpentine belt off and it's got a ton of cracks in it, so before I leave I'll replace this serpentine belt. So let me go ahead down here and you can see the liquid where that I believe it's the water pump leaking. I don't imagine that's oil, but let me double check it. Well, after dabbing this and looking at it a little closer, looks like it may be oil, but as you can see, that water pump freeze plug is damaged. So I may have oil leak and a water pump leak. So let me go ahead and rip this stuff apart and see if I could come out with a better assessment. Well, my day's not going as planned. I thought I was going to be on the road by now, headed back to Little Rock and Albuquerque, but the water pump that I brought with me was some old crappy used water pump that I probably meant to toss in the trash. Somehow got thrown in the back of my car and I thought it was one of my new pumps. So anyway, I can't find a new Asian pump locally, and the dealer wants $200 for a water pump. So I checked one salvage yard for a newish used pump, didn't find one there, and I'm going to check this junkyard here in Kentucky for one, and if I can't find a newish Volvo or Asian pump, I'm going to go to get a local parts store and get a GMB or whatever they are. Put that on there. Hopefully it'll last 70,000 miles. A lot of times those pumps only last around 30 to 50,000 before they're leaking, and you got to do the timing belt again before it's even time. So car still has two bad door latches, so I'll grab a couple of door latches while I'm out here. Hopefully they'll be good, and I'll get that fixed while I'm here. Might as well. Then I'll hit the road. It's going to be a long day. I'm back, and I think I have all the parts I need to start putting this back together. So let me clean up the block where the water pump goes and get the water pump cleaned up and get this car back together. Here's the old pump here on the right. I believe it's the original pump. It's leaking a little bit, and as you can see, it's missing cogs from the pulley there. Also on the original pumps, there's no micro etched in stamps, but it is an Asian pump with Volvo on it. This is the pump I just pulled from the salvage yard car, and the timing belt cover sticker was dated 2 years ago. It has these little etched in numbers here that like serial number, whatever, lot number, and it doesn't spin as freely as this one here does. And I believe it's going to be good another 8 years at least. So I cleaned the surface off real good. I used a razor blade to scrape the gasket off, and then I used a wire brush and some paint thinner to clean off the rest of it. And this is how much of the gasket came off of the engine with the old pump. So I need to knock the rest of that gasket off of the engine so that I can put the new gasket and pump together. These pumps are not glued on, they're just sealed on with the gasket. I think what happens is when the gaskets get hot and wet, they swell and keep it sealed. So whenever I'm cutting the gasket away, which I'm being real careful of, I'm cutting the gasket away from the block. I try to put the pieces on the water pump, give me an idea how much I have left, and then I look down there real close, and I look up there real close, and then I use a wire brush. It's best to use a brass one with some cleaner to clean that off the best you can and get that replacement water pump on. That's what the surface looks like, cleaned and ready for the new pump. It's not spotless, but you run your finger along it and it feels smooth. You don't feel any pieces or chunks of gasket on there. Then I wiped it off with some paint thinner or acetone or something and set the new gasket in place and put the pump on. Now, if you can remember, you want to order and put in new water pump bolts. If for some reason you failed to do that, you want to make sure that your housing is the same thickness if you're going to use the same bolts. Some of your aftermarket pumps have a thinner housing than these Volvo pumps do. Heck, even this new Volvo pump has a thinner housing than the old one. So I did get the bolts from the other pump that I pulled off, and I'm going to use them. They're an 1/8 of an inch thinner. So I'm going to go ahead and put this pump in place with the new gasket. I had to back the crank up a tooth because it was actually off, a whole tooth. So I got it turned back on. I got the belt started. I put the cover on, got these two cams lined back up. Now I'm going to put the belt on and double check the timing. I got the crank dead on. I got the intake cam dead on. I got the exhaust cam not quite a half a tooth advanced. So I pulled the pin to release the slack. Now I'm going to roll the motor a couple of times and double check the timing. Okay, I rolled the engine a couple of times. If you can see down there. The crank is dead on. And the intake cam is dead on. The exhaust cam is not quite a half a tooth. So about a quarter of a tooth. So it's as close as it could be. It's just about dead on. Let me get a extension on that marker here so we can see where that exhaust cam is. Heck, that's just about dead on with that little piece of stick there. So, timing's right. Now I'm replacing the plugs. These are the plugs I pulled out. They have about 30,000 miles on them, something like that. And I had these plugs I was going to put in my car, but since my daughter's is pretty much due, I'm going to put the new plugs in her car. So, I'm going to go ahead and double check the gap on them. And they are for a turbo model. Turbo Volvo 5-cylinder. Check the gap on them, make sure they're 0.028 and drop them in. I started the car up. It ran for about 5 seconds and died. Was suffering the lawnmower syndrome, so I just cranked it and cranked it and cranked it until it fired back up. and it's running smooth. I'm on my, I guess, third fill on the water, flushing the coolant. So after a couple more minutes, I'm gonna go ahead and drain the last of this water out and add coolant. It has no thermostat in it, so I'll install the thermostat too. I'm getting smoke back there, so I must be getting water back there or something. Time for me to add the coolant, so I'll put the thermostat back in, and as you can see, I put the pin toward the front of the car. It's got a little corrosion on that sensor there. I'm going to make sure that that sensor's tight. I'm going to put 2 water pump bolts in the housing, and I just wanted to mention to you guys, somebody else asked me to mention it as well. These timing belt covers, the inner one is hard and brittle, and these little posts that stick out to help it keep its distance are breaking off as soon as you bump them. I bumped it with the tensioner pulley and it broke off, so you got to make sure you don't leave those down in there to bounce around on the timing belt and possibly tear up the timing belt. One guy reported that his got stuck on the timing belt and cut the timing belt. It didn't throw timing, but you know, that's a hazard for these inner belt cam covers, so be aware of that. Next up is installing this reflector I got onto this light assembly. So I'm going to pull this apart, set them side by side so you can see the difference in the brightness. That's the replacement one, and that's the one that was on there. You can see the reflectiveness is very different, so she should have more light on the road. I just replaced the door latch. This thing looked like it was new in the junkyard. I got the keyhole lined up, which is a little tough, and the handle popped in place. So I'm going to go ahead and close this door up. But as usual, these panels come apart. So I'm going to try this power grab stuff next. I had some stuff that was similar to this, and I used to use liquid nail, but the liquid nail comes back apart after a few years, so maybe this stuff will hold better for long-term use. Just about done with the car. Took it on a test drive. It drove well. I forgot to put the little spacer in there on that tensioner, so I got that there. I'm gonna put that in. I got a Gates serpentine belt because that's the best one I could find. I got some oil change stickers from O'Reilly's. I'm gonna put one of those in the car where my daughter can see it. And I got the tensioner pulled on the serpentine belt. I'm gonna let the engine cool down just a little bit before I put this on. So, giving it a few minutes to cool down. In the meantime, I'm gonna go load my car and clean up the rest of my mess here. Heard some bumping around, rattling in the back while we were driving, and it looks like the strut mount is torn on this rear shock back here. So I'll get a couple of those, or this may be loose, one or the other, but it looks like it's torn, so I'll work on getting that replaced. Left Cincinnati last night. Stopped in somewhere in Tennessee between Nashville and Jackson on I-40, get some rest. This is going to be day 2 of our travel back to Albuquerque. I'm going to check my oil before I start and check my oil at one of my stops, see if there's a difference in the level. So let me wipe this down and see. Okay, looks like I'm not quite a quarter of a quart low, and I'll check it after my first stop when I get to a level parking spot. Starting out today with this 01 V70 cross country. Do an oil change on it. My buddy replaced his 95 850 with this vehicle. Says it seems to be running real well, doesn't have any issues, so he's going to do his first oil change today. I have the car on ramps. Now, these cars have the oil filter cartridge. I'm going to make sure that the filter wrench that I have will break the filter loose before I drain the oil out. Here's the tool. That's the gasket for the cartridge housing. And here's the filter. These are Meili filters, or OEM, for these Volvo vehicles, 99 and newer. On this 2001, Volvo was kind enough to install this belly pan to protect the lower side of the engine. It had 12 millimeter bolts in there, so you have to remove those bolts, drop it down, then you'll have access to your oil filter, which is there, and your oil drain plug, which is behind the oil pan. I got the oil filter wrench size A. That one did not fit. I thought since the seal fell down in there it would fit, but it did not. It's too big. So I'll have to use my old style oil filter wrench and get another one of these, exchange that one. Okay, you take the housing out. Usually the filter will still be stuck to the engine. Now on the housing, you need to take the seal off of it and put the new seal on. It has a groove next to the bottom that the oil seal sits. So I'm going to lubricate the new oil seal, set it on there. Pull that filter off. It should just pop out of there very easy, like so, and put the new one up there. Make sure there's nothing left up there and that's all clean. Push the filter on, it'll just press in place. Then you put the gasket on the housing, screw the housing up until it stops. It meets with the metal. It should be sealed. Doesn't need to be any force. It just has to be seated. So now we're going to go ahead and fill up the oil since we already put the bolt on. Should take about 6 quarts. Stop at 5, run it 5 minutes, let it settle 5 minutes, check it again, top it off. Alright, I checked the filter housing and the bolt for leaks. Had no leaks, so I went on ahead and put the belly pan back on, snug those down. Don't have to be tight, just good and snug. And I'm going to let it sit for a few minutes, check the oil, top it off, and be all done. I got a call from a viewer while I was doing that oil change that said she bought one of these P2 Volvos, looked like an 850, and it was only about 4 miles away, so she asked me to come take a look at it. So here I am. We'll see what's going on with it. Looked like a Saab guy had it. It's got Saab wheels on it. Not sure what's going on with the lady that asked me to come help her. I've texted her, I've called her, no response, so I'll give her a couple more minutes, then I'll move on to my next stop. Clue number 1, the cluster's gone. It's at 109, and I checked the mileage under the hood because it's a 95, and it has 171,115, something like that. The spring seats and the strut mounts are gone. You could turn this around and around, and it's off center. It should be centered, and it should not be touching. It should be elevated. So the spring seats and the strut mounts need to be replaced. The battery clip is missing. I have one of those. The spark plug wires are original. Would be nice to replace those. We have some kind of coolant leak at the bottom of the bottle. I tightened the hose. Not sure if that's it, but we'll find out. Because it's running down the frame of the car and dripping on the ground. No evidence of a recent timing belt change. The glove blew up on the PCV, so the PCV needs to be serviced. It's clicking when she turns a turn. So it needs a CV axle, more than likely. Has no cabin air filter cartridge. She may want to add that. Windshield's cracked, so she may want to replace that. Couple of dents on the doors. Not sure if she's concerned about that or at all. And it has its wicked stepbrother wheels on it. Saab wheels. Interesting. We have oil and fluid down here on the driver's side. Hopefully that's not a rear main seal leak, but it's some kind of leak. So we'll investigate that closer. If you feel that this information was useful, please like it and share it with your social media friends. You can subscribe to my channel so that you will get notifications of future videos that I post. You can follow me on Twitter, and if you need to contact me directly, please visit my website. And if you have any questions, leave them below, and someone or myself will reply to them. Again, thank you very much for watching.